Robert Duvall looked at Clint Eastwood and said, "I become someone new every time. You've been the same guy for 15 years. You're not an actor. You're a product." He meant it. Duvall had just finished The Godfather with Brando after weeks of rehearsal and total transformation. But when Eastwood responded with 6 words, it became one of the most legendary comebacks in Hollywood history. However, to understand why Duvall said what he said, you have to understand what acting meant to him. Robert Duvall grew up a military brat. His father was a Navy admiral. Discipline wasn't optional. It was oxygen. He found acting at the neighborhood playhouse and treated it like a religion. Sanford Meisner taught him to strip away everything fake. No indicating, no performing, just truthful behavior in imaginary circumstances. Duvall took it further than almost anyone. He had a phrase he lived by, from ink to behavior. Words on a page had to become a living, breathing human being. Anything less was fraud. For The Godfather, he didn't just learn his lines. He spent weeks with the cast before filming started. Coppola had them eat dinners together in character, improvise family history, build relationships that would feel real on screen. Duvall didn't play Tom Hagen. He became Tom Hagen. Years later, his co-star on Tender Mercies would say she never met Robert Duvall during filming. Only Max Sledge, the broken-down country singer he was playing. That's how deep he went. "Stripping away artifice," he once said. "That's the constant standard I aim for in acting. And I'd like to be remembered as an emotional actor who could deliver the emotional goods." The actors he respected were the ones who suffered for their craft. Brando, Pacino, Hoffman, men who bled for their roles. The actors he didn't respect were the ones who showed up and played themselves. Wayne, McQueen, Eastwood.
Same squint since 1964, same whisper, same refusal to transform into anything other than Clint Eastwood in a different costume. When Duvall signed on for Joe Kidd, he thought he was making a serious Western with a serious director. Then he watched his co-star work and realized he was standing next to everything he'd spent his career rejecting. It was 1972, the set of Joe Kidd in the Arizona desert. Duvall had arrived fresh from working with Coppola and Marlon Brando. Eastwood showed up, hit his marks, and went home. 2 men, same movie. Completely different ideas about what acting meant. One of them was about to be proven wrong in a way nobody saw coming. By 1972, Hollywood was split down the middle. On one side, the method actors, Brando, Pacino, De Niro, Duvall, trained in technique. Transformation was everything. You didn't play a character, you became one. On the other side, the movie stars, Newman, McQueen, Eastwood, presence over process, show up, know your lines, trust the camera to find something worth watching. The method actors looked down on the stars. Brando called old Hollywood breakfast cereal. Same product in the box every time. Predictable, disposable. Duvall was a true believer. He'd trained under Sanford Meisner at the neighborhood playhouse, roomed with Dustin Hoffman and Gene Hackman when none of them could afford rent. Worshipped Brando before the rest of the world caught up. His philosophy came straight from Meisner. When you create a character, it's like making a chair, except instead of making something out of wood, you make it out of yourself. That's the actor's craft. Eastwood had no craft, not the way Duvall defined it. No formal training, no technique. Learned on the job. TV westerns, Italian cheapies, whatever paid the bills. Critics agreed. Duvall was a chameleon, a craftsman, the real deal. Eastwood was a squint in a cowboy hat, but audiences didn't read reviews. Eastwood was the biggest box office draw in America. Duvall was a respected character actor who'd never carried a film. In 1972, they ended up on the same set. The tension was real before cameras ever rolled. Eastwood heard it all. The criticism, the dismissal, the contempt. He never responded, just kept working. Pauline Kael called him wooden, said he had no gift for acting whatsoever. Sergio Leone, the man who made him a star, called him a block of marble, a mask of wax. The verdict from the people who were supposed to know Clint Eastwood wasn't an actor. He was a face that photographed well under a cowboy hat. What they missed was simple. The stillness was the point. Eastwood understood something the method actors didn't. The camera doesn't need you to do much. A look can carry more weight than a monologue. Silence can hit harder than screaming. He'd learned it in Italy. Leone would hold on his face for 30 seconds. No dialogue, just the squint, just the eyes. Audiences couldn't look away. That wasn't laziness. That was economy. And by 1972, Eastwood was already thinking bigger than acting. He'd started watching directors, how they set up shots, how they moved cameras, how they wasted time or didn't. Don Siegel became his mentor, taught him efficiency, taught him to trust actors, taught him the best take was usually the first one. The year before Joe Kidd, Eastwood directed his first film, Play Misty for Me. Small budget, made money. Critics ignored it, and he didn't care. High Plains Drifter was already in development. Then, The Outlaw Josie Wales. Then, more. Eastwood wasn't trying to be the greatest actor of his generation. He was trying to be something else entirely. But in 1972, none of that mattered to Robert Duvall. All Duvall saw was a TV actor who got lucky with a poncho, a man who showed up, squinted at the lens, and called it a performance. The marble block was bigger than the chameleon, and that burned most of all. Part 5. The Confrontation. Joe Kidd shot in Arizona in early 1972, John Sturgis directing. Elmore Leonard script. Studio western with a decent budget and 2 stars who couldn't have been more different. Duvall played the villain, Frank Harlan, a wealthy land baron willing to kill to protect what he owned. Eastwood played the hero, Joe Kidd, a hunter dragged into a war he didn't start. On paper, it should have worked. On set, the tension was immediate. Sturgis ran a tight production. No time for character exploration, no rehearsal dinners, no weeks of preparation. Show up, shoot the scene, move on. This was Eastwood's natural habitat, Duvall's nightmare. Between setups, Duvall watched Eastwood work. Same squint he'd seen in the Dollars trilogy, same whisper, same stillness. No variation, no discovery, no transformation. Just a man playing himself in a different hat. One afternoon, between takes, Duvall had seen enough. Cast and crew within earshot. The Arizona sun bearing down. Duvall didn't whisper. I become someone new every time. You've been the same guy for 15 years. You're not an actor. You're a product. The words hung in the desert air. Nobody moved. Crew members suddenly found interesting things to look at on the ground. Eastwood's expression didn't change. Same stillness he brought to every scene. He could have walked away. Could have reminded Duvall whose name was above the title. Could have told him what audiences and box office receipts already proved. Instead, he said 6 words. Quiet, no anger. Like a man who'd already seen how this story ended. Stars fade. Directors make history. Duvall stared at him. For a moment, nothing. Just the Arizona wind and the distant sound of crew members pretending to work. It didn't sound like a comeback. It sounded like deflection. Directors? Eastwood had made one low-budget thriller. Hardly a legacy. Hardly a response to being called a product to his face. Duvall almost laughed. The moment passed. Filming continued. Joe Kidd wrapped on schedule, under budget, because that's how Eastwood operated. But Eastwood meant every word. He understood something Duvall didn't see yet. Acting was a job. Directing was a legacy. Actors depend on scripts, on directors, on studios willing to take a chance. One wrong role and you're forgotten. One bad decade and you're a cautionary tale. Directors shape the vision. They decide what the audience sees, what it feels, what it remembers. They build worlds that outlast any single performance. Duvall wanted to be remembered as the greatest actor of his generation, a man who transformed, who disappeared into characters so completely that audiences forgot they were watching Robert Duvall. Eastwood wanted something different, to be remembered as someone who changed how movies were made. In 1972, Duvall was right. Eastwood wasn't much of an actor, but Eastwood wasn't trying to be. He was building something bigger than any role. Bigger than any transformation, bigger than any single film. It would take 20 years to prove it, and the proof would come in the form of the one thing Duvall wanted most, the definitive Western. After Joe Kidd, Duvall's career caught fire. The Godfather Part 2, Network, Apocalypse Now. Colonel Kilgore alone should have made him immortal. I love the smell of napalm in the morning. One line, seared into cinema history forever. But the Oscar didn't come. Not yet. He kept working. Kept transforming. The Great Santini, True Confessions, disappearing into characters so completely that audiences forgot who they were watching. Then came 1983, Tender Mercies, McSledge, a broken-down country singer trying to rebuild himself in rural Texas. Duvall didn't just act the role, he learned to sing. Wrote some of the songs himself, spent months absorbing Texas culture until the character lived in his bones. His co-star later said she never met Robert Duvall on that set. Only Max Sledge. That's how deep he went. Finally, the Academy noticed. Best Actor, 1984. Robert Duvall. Standing at that podium, he'd proven everything he believed. Total transformation, emotional truth, the craft at its highest level. And where was Eastwood? Making Dirty Harry sequels, orangutan comedies, still squinting, still whispering, still not a real actor. Duvall had won, or so he thought. 5 years later, the role of a lifetime arrived. Lonesome Dove, Larry McMurtry's epic. Duvall would play Augustus McCrae, a legendary Texas Ranger on one last cattle drive. He said it publicly. "We're making the godfather of Westerns." He meant it. This would be the definitive statement on the American West, the masterpiece the genre deserved. The miniseries aired in 1989. Critics raved, audiences watched in record numbers. Duvall's performance was extraordinary, funny, heartbreaking, unforgettable. But it was television, not film. Emmy, not Oscar. Duvall had made something great, just not quite great enough. The godfather of Westerns was still out there, and the man who would make it was someone Duvall had dismissed on a desert set 17 years earlier. Part 8. What Eastwood built. While Duvall was winning his Oscar, Eastwood was building something else entirely. Film after film, year after year, never stopping. High Plains Drifter, The Outlaw Josie Wales, Bronco Billy, Honky Tonk Man, Pale Rider. Critics dismissed most of them, called them workmanlike, competent but unremarkable. Eastwood didn't care. He wasn't chasing reviews, he was learning. Every film taught him something new, how to frame a shot, how to pace a scene, how to get what he needed without wasting anyone's time. He developed a reputation, on time, under budget, 1 or 2 takes maximum, the opposite of the method approach. No chaos, no ego, no suffering for art, just efficiency. By the mid-1980s, something shifted. Bird, a jazz biopic about Charlie Parker, stunned critics who'd written him off. Suddenly, Eastwood wasn't just a star who directed vanity projects. He was a filmmaker, and he had a script he'd been holding for almost a decade. The Cut Whore Killings, written by David Webb Peoples in 1976, 4 years after Joe Kidd. Nobody in Hollywood wanted it. Too dark, too slow, too much meditation on violence, not enough action. Eastwood read it once and knew this was the one, but he wasn't ready. I wasn't old enough to play Money. William Money needed to be weathered, hollowed out by time and regret, a man carrying the weight of every terrible thing he'd ever done. Eastwood was still in his 50s, still too strong. So he waited, made other films, let the years carve lines into his face. By 1991, he was 61 years old, body slower, eyes heavier, finally old enough to play a man destroyed by violence. He renamed the script Unforgiven. The Godfather of Westerns wasn't going to be a television miniseries. It was going to be a masterpiece. Part 9. Oscar night 1993. Unforgiven opened in August 1992. Critics didn't just praise it, they called it the greatest Western in decades, maybe the greatest ever made. $159 million worldwide against a $14 million budget. But the numbers weren't the point. The film itself was. Everything John Wayne believed about Westerns, Eastwood inverted. Everything Duvall believed about acting, Eastwood ignored. William Money wasn't a hero. He was a monster who'd done things he couldn't speak about, killed women, killed children, spent decades trying to bury the man he used to be. And when violence pulled him back, it didn't feel triumphant. It felt like damnation. Gene Hackman played Little Bill, a sheriff who beat men bloody and called it justice. Morgan Freeman played Ned Logan, a retired killer who'd lost the stomach for it. Every character who lived by violence was destroyed by it. The film's most famous line came at the end, Little Bill, dying on a barroom floor. "I don't deserve this, to die like this." Money's response, "Deserve's got nothing to do with it." That was the whole thesis. Violence doesn't care what you deserve. March 29, 1993. Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. Unforgiven wins Best Picture. Clint Eastwood wins Best Director. Gene Hackman wins Best Supporting Actor. The man who wasn't a real actor had just made the definitive Western of his generation. Eastwood's speech was brief, thanked the cast, the crew, the Academy. He didn't mention Duvall, didn't mention the Arizona set, didn't mention products or transformations or who belonged in what profession. He didn't need to. 6 words, 20 years, prophecy fulfilled. Stars fade, directors make history. Part 10. What changed? Unforgiven didn't just win awards, it rewrote what Westerns could be. Before 1992, the genre was a corpse, a museum piece, something your grandfather talked about while you checked your watch. After Unforgiven, filmmakers saw new possibilities. You could tell the truth about violence and still fill theaters. You could make audiences uncomfortable and still win Oscars. You could question the myth and still honor the genre. The revisionist Western became the dominant form. No Country for Old Men. There Will Be Blood. The assassination of Jesse James, True Grit, Hell or high water, the power of the dog. Every one of them owes something to what Eastwood proved that year. He didn't stop. Mystic River, $1 Million Baby, Letters from Iwo Jima, Gran Torino, 2 more Oscars, countless nominations, a body of work so large it takes days to absorb. Still directing at 94, still showing up, still not wasting anyone's time. And Duvall? He kept acting. Good roles, great performances. The Apostle, which he also wrote and directed. Open Range, The Judge, still transforming, still disappearing into characters, still practicing the craft he'd devoted his life to. But he never made a masterpiece behind the camera. Never won Best Picture. Never got to make the godfather of Westerns on the big screen. Lonesome Dove remains his legacy in the genre. Beloved, important, one of the great television achievements. But when people talk about the greatest Western ever made, they don't say Lonesome Dove. They say Unforgiven. The product made the definitive statement. The real actor made a miniseries. Duvall was right about one thing. Eastwood wasn't a great actor. Not in the way Brando was. Not in the way Duvall himself was. He couldn't disappear into characters, couldn't transform his voice, his body, his entire being into someone unrecognizable. He was always Clint Eastwood, the squint, the whisper, the stillness, same guy for 50 years. But here's what Duvall missed standing on that Arizona set in 1972. Eastwood was never trying to win that fight. He was fighting a different war entirely. A filmmaker who understood that movies weren't about performances. They were about moments, images, the accumulated weight of story told through pictures. The greatest actors need great directors to be remembered. Brando needed Kazan, Coppola, Bertolucci. Duvall needed Coppola, Beresford, Foote. Take away those directors and the performances don't exist. The transformations never happen. The Oscars stay on someone else's shelf. Eastwood needed no one. He became his own director, his own producer, his own legacy. Built a company, built a catalog, built something that would outlast any single role. When film students study cinema 50 years from now, they won't study Eastwood the actor. They'll study Eastwood the filmmaker, the body of work, the efficiency, the way he found poetry in stillness and death in violence. That's what Duvall couldn't see in 1972. A television actor with no formal training, a man who showed up, squinted at the lens, and went home early. What could that guy possibly know about legacy? More than anyone expected. 2 men, same set, same argument that's been happening in Hollywood since the beginning. What matters more, the craft or the outcome? Duvall believed in the process, the transformation, the sacred act of becoming someone else. He gave everything to every role because that's what acting demanded. That's what Meisner taught him. That's what Brando proved was possible. He was right. Eastwood believed in the product, the finished film, the thing audiences actually see when the lights go down. He didn't care how he got there, only that he got there, on time, under budget, with something worth watching. He was right too. The lesson isn't that one path beats the other. It's that knowing which game you're playing matters more than how hard you play it. Duvall played the actor's game better than almost anyone. But actors don't control their fate. They wait for scripts, wait for directors, wait for someone to see what they can become. Eastwood refused to wait. He built his own machine, made his own opportunities, turned limitations into a style and a style into an empire. Both men are still here, both careers legendary, both paths valid. But if you want to last, truly last, or are in any industry that chews people up, don't just master the craft, own the outcome. Who understood Hollywood better, Duvall or Eastwood? Drop your take in the comments. Subscribe for more stories about legends and the rivalries that shaped cinema. Like this video so more people can hear about the 6 words that rewrote Western history.